now we're going to do something that fans love. Real quick lightning round, and these guys can comment on some of the other craft categories. Just quickly go through them, and to close us out this evening. Real quick, guys. Costume design. The winner was Cromwell. I feel like the winner should have been Scrooge. The costumes there. A film that should have been nominated is the satire spoof "Start the Revolution Without Me" about the French Revolution with Gene Wilder and Donald Sutherland. The song that won was "For All We Know" from Lovers and Other Strangers. What I should have won based on the nominees is also from Scrooge. Thank you very much. The only real good song from Scrooge. I didn't like the other songs, but that one was the best of the movie and probably the best in that category. However, it should have been nominated. I was torn between a bunch of the songs from Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, but I settled on "In the Long Run" as my favorite song of 1970 from a movie. The winner for Best Score was Love Story, and I admit that one piece of music is iconic and awesome, but I mean, if you really look at a full score, that's all that the score was, just recycled throughout the movie. And so I actually feel like the should have been Patton. The score for Patton is iconic, so iconic, in fact, that people forget it's actually original to the movie Patton. The score that should have been nominated, I think, is Miklos Rosa's work from The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, sort of that old school movie score that I love. Production design, the winner was Patton, of course, which should have won. I mentioned Scrooge earlier. I should have won for production design. What should have been nominated for production design is Ryan's Daughter. They built that whole town. Really impressive work. It looks so real. I think it got underappreciated. Editing, ladies and gentlemen, the winner was Patton again, which should have won based on the nominees. Tora 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 did such a great job. What I say about Tora 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 is a docudrama that did a lot better with the docu than it did with the drama, balancing the Japanese perspective and the American perspective and all the different viewpoints that they included in there. It was a masterpiece of editing, but also was my favorite edited film of the year. Beyond the Valley of the Dolls is a terrifically edited film, and I feel like that should have been nominated, but it would have been hard to get the Academy to recognize that. So that's my lightning round for the craft categories. Do you guys have anything on any of those? And Matt, specifically, is there anything about the sound that you wanted to talk about?
Did you mention sound yet? I don't think you did. Not even lightning. It didn't even get lightning. That's great.
I didn't. It didn't get lightning because I feel like I'm not qualified to talk about sound.
Well, I'm not qualified for any of these. So thanks for having me.
What I'll say to you is from a layman's point of view, and I mean, what I know from sound design, I know from you, and you and I work very closely in trying to fill the world without being onanastic about it. Because my work is based heavily on verisimilitude. So we try not to get too crazy with the sound design, but still make it feel full. When I think about sound design in 1970, MASH stands out to me, and I wonder if it does to you as well, because of the way it layers all different elements of sound in completing that world, and not only completing the world, but using it to advance its sort of satirical motives. That's my perspective. I could be wrong about it, and I'm curious where you are with that.
Yeah, MASH had excellent layered sound, like you're saying. There's more than one thing happening at a time, off-screen, layered dialogue. There's another movie that did not nearly as much, but they made the odd, interesting choice. It was Catch-22, where there was like sounds that overtook dialogue. Generally speaking, in a movie, you don't overtake dialogue with anything. Dialogue's like the king of the hill. But in these movies, MASH and Catch-22, which actually had a very similar kind of satiric vibe to it, they took other sounds and sometimes dialogue itself and piled it on to the point where you could barely hear what they're saying. And it wasn't like it was incidental dialogue off to the side. In Catch-22, it was primary dialogue. You saw the person in front of you. You just couldn't understand what they're saying. That's just a rare choice to make. So I liked it for that reason, not because it's necessarily better, but it's just interesting and new and fresh.
Catch-22 has its problems, but Mike Nichols was playing around with some interesting stuff in that movie.
I got another one that you're going to be surprised by, The Color of Amber, which I wrote off as a TV movie that I couldn't even get through.
Darker Than Amber.
But it had an amazing shot and sound, which is a Robert Zemeckis predecessor. Robert Zemeckis has these amazing long dolly shots that go through glass and through doors. So Darker Than Amber has that. It goes through a glass door in a dolly shot. And when it cuts through the glass, you also get the obscured sound as if you pass through this glass. And I'm sure in the real shoot, there's no glass there. How would you get it without CGI? How do you get a camera through pane of glass? You don't, but you fake it through sound design. And I think it was pretty cool. And they did it Robert Zemeckis before he trademarked it.
I don't think he actually trademarked it.
He's known for that kind of camera.
He does. My main issue with Darker Than Amber is the acting is not that good.
The whole movie, it just felt like a cheap TV movie, but I was like, for a cheap TV movie, that's a pretty cool little trick.
That's all great stuff. If you had an Oscar for sound design, the way that you and I think about it, like creating this atmosphere, what film would you give it?
Listen, so at the one time I can actually defend this movie against your instincts, I can. Love Story. Because it is, as a score and the sound design, the sort of sonic scape as a whole, is actually pretty innovative and effective. If you can bear watching again, because I'm sure you don't remember this and you won't watch it again, so you can take my word for it.
Give me a year off from it.
As an example, so she's supposedly into music in the movie, and they remind you of that through the score and the sort of classical music that's throughout the movie, even though we don't really always know that about her. It reinforces that through that element. There's a scene where he's shopping for Christmas trees, and there's like a medley of songs that seem to be more score-like, even though it's really potentially coming from like a diegetic source. So there's like a play of like, where's this coming from? But it's kind of over top, but there's no other sounds playing in that particular scene. So it's really like a blend of diegetic and non-diegetic. There's another sequence where he's looking for her in different rooms, and each room has a different musical component that he's kind of blending between. And so it's, again, diegetic and non-diegetic, where it's in a musical space. So there's music, but then it's also kind of like morphing and moving. There is just a constant surprise for a story like that that's small and simple and just a few characters with like small movie-ish kind of thing. There's quite a bit of experimentational sound that worked well, and I was surprised to see it and happy to see it.
All right, cool. Zach, any comments on that or any of my other craft choices?
Nope, I'm just along for the ride, man. It was nice hearing both of you guys talk about this.